This is a continuation of the study guide, so just jump right into it. Number 13 here says 2.5x equals negative 13 over 16. Now I got a decimal here, I got a fraction here. I have two choices. I can say I can turn this into both fractions or both decimals. But I don't really know how to turn this guy into a decimal too easily. But I do know that I can turn this guy into a fraction pretty easily. 2.5 is the same thing as 2.5. Right? And what I want to do is, well, I have 2.5 equals negative 13 sixteenths. Actually, it's 2.5 times x, isn't it? Now, the only other thing is that now this is better, but it's not perfect because over here I have a mixed number. I've got a unit and a fraction, and over here I've just got a fraction. So I want to turn this guy into a improper fraction. I just want the fraction, I don't want the units. So 2 times, how do I do that? 2 times 2 plus 1. This denominator times the units plus 1. That's 2 times 2 plus 1. All of that is over 2. Right? And that's times x, and that's equal to negative 13 sixteenths. Okay. So 2 times 2 is 4. 4 plus 1 is 5. 5 over 2 times x equals negative 13 sixteenths. So the thing you should recognize is that 5 halves is the same thing as 2.5. So I want you to kind of think about that, how nothing has really changed. In fact, I haven't actually done any operations to this math equation. I haven't done anything yet. I've just changed the numbers around a little bit to make it easier for me to play with. Okay, so the next thing I do is I say, okay, well, where's the variable? Boom, the x. What's it connected to? It's connected to 5 halves. How's it connected? By a multiplication sign. How do I break that connection? I do the opposite of the connection. So in this case, I'm going to divide. Okay, I'm going to divide both sides by 5 halves. I'm going to divide out that number so that these guys cancel out. Only thing is I got to divide this side by 5 halves. And you know what? It's probably easier to write it like this. 5 halves. Remember, it's a fraction. The top number divided by the bottom number. It's the same thing, either way. So the numbers get canceled out, and the only thing I'm left with is x on this side. And x is equal to negative 13 sixteenths divided by 5 halves. Now the rule for any fraction here is, well, x is equal to, and if I have negative 13 sixteenths divided by 5 halves, the rule for the fraction is you keep the first fraction the same, you change the division symbol to a multiplication symbol, which is not going to be an x because I have an x in the problem, and then I flip the second fraction. So I flip this guy upside down. So now I just multiply across. Just to save a little time, I noticed that there's an even number on top and an even number on bottom. 2 is even. So that means I can cut it in half. What's half of 2? 1. What's half of 16? 8. I can only do that if I can do it to the top and the bottom. And what does this become? Negative 13 times 1 is negative 13. 8 times 5 is 40. And this is what x in this equation equals. To solve this equation, there's a couple things you need to recognize. One is, what's 1/3 in decimals? It's 0.333 repeating. That 0.3 repeating has to do with this. What's 2/3? 2/3 is 0.66666. It's double what 1/3 is. That being said, would you rather deal with 8.6 repeating and negative 1.3 repeating and divide 8.6 by the negative 1.3, or would you rather deal with 8 2/3 and negative 1 1/3? I'd rather deal with this. The only problem is these are in mixed number form, right? So what I'm going to have to do is put them in improper fractions. To do that, I multiply the units times the denominator, and I add the numerator. Divide that whole thing by the denominator. The same thing over here. Units times the denominator. So forget the negative sign for a second. 1 times 3 is 3, plus 1 is 4. This is 4/3. Now I put the negative sign in. Times g. All right. Rewritten. 8 times 3 is 24, plus 2 is 26/3, equals negative 4/3 g. Divide out that 4/3, both sides. In fact, why don't I forget that? Instead of doing that, why don't I multiply both sides by 3? That way, these 3's will cancel out. And I'm left with 26 equals negative 4g. Then I divide both sides by 4. So these 4's cancel out, or negative 4 I should say. And then I get g is 26 over negative 4, or 13 over negative 2.